Man, I am so looking forward to sharing this podcast with you today. As you know, probably if you've been listening all along, last week I got back from a trip to Disney World. Since then, I've scheduled another one that leaves in 1 week. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you the mistakes I made. I'll tell you the things I loved. I'll gripe about some of my fellow vacationers. I will tell you what my favorite resorts are, I now have the best meal that I ever ate was last week. I'll tell you all that, and we'll do it in trip report format. I haven't done one of these in a couple of years. Always enjoyed doing them. Let's get started. All right, let's talk about trip scheduling and gripes first. Here's the deal. Me and my wife go on a lot of trips together. We go on cruises. We love cruises. When we go to the cruises, we often stay at Vero Beach. That's a Disney DVC property because Allegiant, the airline we usually take out of our area, only runs on certain days of the weeks out of this part of Kentucky. And so if we have to leave a couple of days early and come back a couple of days late, so be it. We will stay at Vero Beach and then drive to the cruise terminal. But here's the deal. I'm not a big fan of being at the house by myself. And my wife is in a hike club, a bike club, and a canoe. She'll kill me for saying that. A kayak club, and they usually schedule a couple of big trips every year. This year they just happened to be very close together. She just got back from the Great Lakes where they did a lot of fun stuff. On Sunday or Saturday, I guess it is, she is leaving to go to Montana to see the Glacier National Park. I almost said Glacier Bay, that's in Alaska. The Glacier National Park. I don't like being home by myself during those times. And since with DVC, I don't have any additional cash outlay, I actually got in there to see if I could find some rooms. Well, slim pickings. There was one resort. Keep in mind, I was only 10 days out when I scheduled this. No, more than that, 12 days out. And the only thing that was available was Saratoga Springs, which is a beautiful resort. I've been there before. Nice walking trail. It's spread out all over the place. If you get to stay in the Congress Park section of that, you are a 5 to 10 minute walk from Disney Springs. I remember when I stayed there 3 years ago, Kentucky was in like the baseball World Series and they were getting ready to start playing. By the time I got to my room, I only had a half an hour. I walked around the corner, got Eat by Manit, one of the Indian restaurants there. It was really good. Got back, I carried it back to my room to watch the ball game, and I got back in less than 15 minutes. So that's how close to Disney Springs you are. Now, my gripes. I don't know what has happened to this world. It used to be that I could just blame Generation Z, but now everybody seems to be walking forward with their head down into their phone. So here's what I've started doing. I wait for them to get close to me. If they bump into me, that's fine. And I say, oh, might be time to look up. That's probably I'm 68 years old. It's one of those I'll say what I want to type things, isn't it? But what has happened? Everybody's looking down when they're walking around. It's ridiculous. It's almost like they think they have a rite of passage and you got to get out of my way, even though I'm not looking up. So I noticed it this trip more than I ever have. And we've been on annual trips. You know, every year we go somewhere, and it's worse this year than ever. And Generation Z, you're off the hook. Because I believe I saw as many baby boomers, that's me, walking around doing the same thing. And they're slower. They tap with one finger, all that kind of stuff. That's the first thing. Then I was standing in line at Gideon's. We'll get into Gideon's cookies here in just a moment. And there was this family of like four who decided not only did they want to talk in line, they wanted to talk loud enough that everybody could hear them. And it was obvious they were doing it to be heard because they were dropping names. They were talking about influencers. In fact, probably the one that was talking about influencers, I'm guessing her age was about 55. And I felt like saying, why are you talking so loud in a crowd like this? We really don't care what you have to say. I held back, though. I didn't say that. What I wish I had been able to say, it was the wife doing most of the talking. And I almost said to the husband, when you're home, do you ever get a word in edgewise? But that would not have been good. So that's my two gripes. If that's the only gripes I had in a whole week, that's not bad, right? So here's the deal. I left out of Kentucky, got on my Allegiant plane. It was a 2-hour flight. I landed, I think it was 11 a.m. the day I got there, last Sunday. And I got a rental car. The rental car, it flew into the Sanford Airport, which is a longer drive to Disney World, but a much less stressful setting. Although I do have one concern about my returning flight that I'll share when I talk about my returning flight. So I got there early enough, 11 o'clock. It's less than an hour's drive from, they call it SFB as the airport. It's Sanford Orlando Airport. And when I got there, I got my car. They asked me if I mind having a compact, and I actually like the compact. They're easier to park. I'm by myself. I don't have multiple people's luggage, just my own. I got in and went about my drive. I had thought about stopping for some fast food on the way over to save my dining credits, but I had my dining planned out so well, I decided to use a credit for quick service. And I'm going to tell you what I was going to try. I'll tell you what I did try. I got to Kidani. I go ahead. They got a neat parking garage. Makes you feel like you're at a ball game. So for some reason, I had always been staying to the left of the lobby in recent years. So I said, well, I'm going to pull all the way down to the Rafiki elevator, which you can park close to an elevator that takes you pretty close to your room. So that's what I did. I got out of the elevator. I went into the lobby since I have the dining plan, I got a free drink mug. That's a souvenir drink mug, and they actually stamp it for 14 days so at any resort, not the parks, but at any resort, you could get free refills at any of the refill stations. That includes coffee, if there's coffee at the refill station, and there is at Kidani. So I could get free coffee, all that good stuff. I got my mug, didn't have my room number yet, so I walked down to the pool because I knew they had a refill station down there. And I had decided, well, this pool bar is so well thought of that I'm going to get my food there. And I got a chicken pita pocket made out of naan bread. It was quick service. It came with, you're allowed to have one alcoholic drink with that. I forget what I got, but it was blue and it was really tasty. So that's how my day started. They also, one of the things offered, in fact, the most expensive thing on the menu is a foot-long hot dog. But dude, that sucker was not just a foot-long hot dog. It was a jumbo foot-long hot dog. That thing they put chili and cheese on it. Shoot, it must have weighed 3 pounds by the time they got through it, especially when they put the French fries next to it. So I wasn't quite ready for one of those. Plus, I saw them make them. They're just taking hot dogs. I don't know what I expected them to do, but they just keep hot dogs in a steamer. They don't. I like the roller type hot dogs, that you see at some ballparks or even at Love's, where they're rolling the hot dogs on something that kind of browns them as well. So that was my first quick service meal. I got my notification of my room. Keep in mind, we stayed at Kidani in 2018, and between me and my family that I've given points to, this is my 8th visit. I love the place. I love it so much that all I put on my requirements is lobby. I would like to be close to the lobby, and the main reason is to get the drink refills. You can get them in the gift shop at the lobby. You can get them at the swimming pool. So that's what I did. So I moved my car a little bit closer to that elevator. and got my luggage, walked to my room, went up to the fourth floor. Now, let me say this. You're going to see here in a moment that the request I put down wasn't even close to what I got. I was almost as far away from the lobby as I could possibly be. I got off the Rafiki elevator. I looked at the numbers. My room was to the left. So I started walking and walking and walking. And before I knew it, it's arranged like a horseshoe. So you're walking around a loop. And I was at the top of that loop. So if you can picture it in your brain, I'm at the top of the loop before it hooks down to the other side of the horseshoe. The top of the loop is the end of that savanna. Okay. Now, every trip we've ever had, I've always been able, any time of the day, maybe I just got lucky, to walk out on the balcony and there'd be groups of animals there. So I was excited, got to my room, went inside, looked out to the balcony. There was no animals to be seen anywhere. Not a bird, they have all types. There's just so many different types of antelopes they described to me. No small antelopes. One of the antelopes they have is the fastest animal on their property. So that's how my week started. I was disappointed. If you listened to the video about it, you heard that last week. And I only saw one good group of animals. Everything else was sporadic. It was usually, and that group was right after the truck came by to stuff their food into their particular spots that they like to eat from. So that's how it started. Kidani, I will still say, is my favorite resort. I had been trying to, I'm getting ready to get ahead of myself. That evening, my favorite restaurant on property is Sanaa. It is a African/Indian restaurant with some other offerings. For those of you that are scared of those spices, I had that for that night. I always go there. I went down there. Man, I had the delicious beef. It was shredded. It had sauce on it. I can't describe it. It came with a side of chickpea wa, which is a tomato-type based chickpea, which, it sounds kind of gross, but it was actually excellent. So they bring you out a plate, and it has 3 bowls on it. One is the meat, one is the rice, and one is your side, which in my case was the chickpea wa. It was kind of like a stew. That's the best way to describe it. So I dumped my rice out on the plate, put my meat over top of that, and I was so stuffed. The dining plan includes a drink and a dessert. So by the time I got to the dessert, there's no way I could eat that. They have a great dessert that's got chocolate peanut butter mousse on it. It's got it's kind of giraffe themed. So the sides of it is the color of a giraffe. You've got a chocolate, one of those things they create on a piece of parchment paper where they sprinkle chocolate and then create something out of it. That's laying on top. I got that part of it to go, and it was excellent. So for 4 months, I had been looking to schedule a starlight safari trip at this resort, at Kidani. And it's so popular, I never did find one over the 4 months. But it just so happens I was staying at Kidani 2 nights. As I was going to bed the first night, just on a hunch, I got back on there to see if anything was available. And sure enough, something had popped open the end of the second day. So I scheduled it. It was great. I'll go ahead and tell you, even though that was not the next thing I did. It was great. It was probably the highlight of anything I've ever done at Disney World. And I did Keys to the Kingdom this trip, which was also excellent. I'll tell you about that here in just a moment. So it's basically you get on a truck with other people, you get night vision, binoculars, and you can see everything out there. It made up for the lack of animals from the balcony, because I guess we were within 5 feet of every animal on that savanna. It was after dark. It was about 8:30. So that was an absolutely outstanding thing to do. I also that day had decided to go over to Disney Springs and eat at Morimoto Asia. I like good Asian food. I knew that if I scheduled an evening meal, that would take two. They're considered a signature restaurant, so it would take two of my dining credits. So I instead scheduled a lunch, and it only took one. So I got there so early that I walked around a little bit, but it was hot, and there was a line at Gideon's, and I always heard everybody talk about Gideon's cookies. So I got in line. That's where I heard the person talk about everything that they knew loud enough for everybody to hear them. It probably took me 25 minutes to go through the line, and it's kind of cool inside. I guess it's worth seeing once. I just didn't get all the hype about Gideon's. The cookies are just okay. If you get a double chocolate chip, it's about, I'm going to say, 60% cookie, 40% chocolate chips. And most of those chocolate chips are not in the cookie, they're wrapped around the outside of the cookie. So I wasn't crazy about it. I know a lot of people are, so I'm in the minority there. Went to my Morimoto Asia lunch. They brought me chopsticks. I told them even though I had been practicing, I probably needed a fork. And I got some beef lo mein. That was excellent. Best meal I've ever had at Disney. They're also big on duck dishes and sushi there. That's why it's such a popular place. Went back to my hotel room and got ready for that Starlight Safari that night. So next morning I checked out and went over to Riviera next. I'd never been to Riviera. I thought about eating breakfast at the Mara, which is the quick service over at Jambo House. Jambo House, Animal Kingdom Lodge Jambo, is about a 10-minute walk from Kidani, or there is a van that goes back and forth. You could do it either way. I went over there because they said breakfast opens at 6:30. I went over there at 6:30, but the hot stuff really doesn't start until 7. So I got a cinnamon roll. I was disappointed, although I did save. That saved me another quick service credit. That's what that would have been. So I got that. I drove, it's kind of funny. Both rooms were available at the same time. The first one was available at 12:30. The second one was available at 12:30. And the third one was pretty close to that, but not bad. So when I got to Riviera, I drove over probably at about, I stayed as long as I could to checkout time, and I went over probably about 10:30. Room wasn't ready yet. Of course, I had 2 hours to wait. I had actually thought ahead and dressed in my swim trunks and a swim shirt that morning, thinking that I'd probably go check out their pool, and that's exactly what I did. I got a parking space just 3 spaces from the front of the hotel. Huge parking space. I don't think it was full the whole time I was there. 2 nights at Riviera. Riviera, I tell you what, Kidani might still be my favorite resort. I'll call it 1A and call Riviera 1B. Riviera is by far my favorite room, so that's what I did. I started about the next morning. I was going to schedule a Topolino's breakfast for it was 1 credit, but it was a character meal. And I'm not sure how a 68-year-old man solo would fit in with a character meal. And as my son said, you don't go to character meals for the food, although I have heard the food was pretty good. So I didn't get to go to Topolino's, but that is one evening meal that I have scheduled for this next trip. It is on the 10th floor. It's got a good lookout. My next meal will be at 8:30. I'm hoping that wraps into the Epcot fireworks, because the cool thing about Riviera is that the front of the building faces the parking lot, as you might expect, but you can also see Spaceship Earth, and you can see their fireworks. And if you watched my video from last weekend, you'll see how close that was. So the fireworks were great. I was in the middle of a lightning storm. That made it exciting. You could also see out in a far distance, you could see the fireworks at Magic Kingdom. And during the day, you could also see a little bit further to the right, the hot air balloon that goes up and down at Disney Springs. You could see all those coolest views ever, man. And that is one of the cheapest rooms because it is considered a resort view or a standard view as opposed to a preferred view. The preferred view is on the back of the building because it overlooks water and greenery, and in this case, the Starliner and Caribbean, however you want to say it, Caribbean Beach was in the background. So the resort view is actually the cheapest, and that's the one you can go to see Epcot and the hot air balloon and all that stuff. I walked into the Riviera studio, and I immediately thought, man, this looks like the biggest studio I have ever been in. It looked huge. Maybe it was all in my mind, but as I mentioned in last week's video, you could easily put a family of 5 in here because they've got their queen bed. Then they've got their Murphy that pulls down from the back wall that 2 people could comfortably sleep in. Then they've got like a twin size bed that pulls down in front of the television. So if you still got a small child or a short adult for that matter, you could easily fit 5 in here. I loved Riviera. I did go to their Primo Piatto location, which is their quick service. I always ordered ahead. They brought the food out to you. The only thing I missed out on was I had heard about the blueberry lemon pancakes, and I forgot about them. So you can bet I'll be getting them this next time. I did get a full-size breakfast with the hash browns and the eggs and all that while I was there, and that was how I had used my dining plan. Now, one thing I wanted to do while I was at Riviera was to get on the Starliner. It's got to stop right there at the Riviera and ride over to the back of Epcot, walk around to Cake Bake Shop, and just go in the bakery and get a piece of cake. And it was good. For some reason, I didn't like it as much as the one I had last year. In fact, the reason I went back is because I loved it so much last year. I actually had a meal there at the bar last year. Great red beans and rice is what I got with a lemonade. I remember it. It was really good. But, it was okay. They charge you $2 more for their decorative bag to carry it out in. So, we're getting a little bit ridiculous. I remember one of the podcasts that I listen to all the time, they were really ripping on Cake Bake when it was first going to open, but they later said as much as they wanted to hate it, they really liked it. So it is worth going to. But the main reason I went over there that night, since I had decided not to use a table service credit for Topolino's character breakfast, I instead scheduled it for Trattoria El Forno, which is the Italian restaurant. Probably the best Italian restaurant on property. I know a lot of people like the ones at Disney Springs. A lot of people like the one at Epcot. I like this one the best. Nicest slab of lasagna I believe I had in years. So that was really good. So back to Riviera that night and balcony. That's when I recorded the video. Then the next morning I checked out and went over to Bay Lake Tower. Didn't care when I got my room that day because I was going to get over there about 7, go ahead and get in line. Along with us, believe it or not, still other people had opened at 8:30. I guess I got there at 7:30. They held us at security for a while, but Bay Lake Tower and Contemporary, there's a sidewalk that takes you right to the Magic Kingdom. I believe I walked it in less than 10 minutes, and that's why I wanted to be at Bay Lake Tower. I mean, let's face it, Bay Lake Tower, even though it's not the most popular DVC resort, it is got great views of the fireworks. The fireworks views from a balcony is amazing there. It's the best one. It's better than Grand Floridian. It is better than Polynesian because it's so close, and that really makes a difference. I love the Polynesian. I love the tower when I stayed there last year. The fireworks were great, but you see it in a horizon. This one, you see it right next to it. In fact, you get the side perspective, so you might be a little bit amazed at how far behind the Magic Kingdom those fireworks are actually shot off. And of course, you can also watch the monorail. That's kind of cool. And you can see the water, and it was really a nice place. So that day I got in line because at 9 o'clock I was going to do the Keys to the Kingdom tour. Shout out Todd. If you ever have a chance to get Todd to be your leader of the Keys to the Kingdom tour, he's excellent. And I know that because by the time I got to the utilidors, he knew so many people down there. One of them actually told us, they said, you've got the greatest narrator of any of them. So he was excellent. And He was in the Air Force. We got some Air Force stories. It's kind of funny. We did get most of it. Most of it, it's 5 hours long, and only the last 90 minutes were in the utilidors. They do that on purpose or try to get you out of the heat of the day some. The first thing we did is walk from Main Street back to, now there was stories he told us all the way back there, but we went to Jungle Cruise and we got on a boat. We got to take a boat away from some people, so they probably weren't happy about that. And then instead of having the normal spiel, our narrator didn't do the same thing. He did the history of the Jungle Cruise and how Walt had really wanted real animals in that thing. So it was kind of a fascinating little tour. We walked from there around past Tiana. We didn't go past Tiana's, the log flume ride or whatever you want to call that. We turned at Pecos Bill's, and our lunch was scheduled for about that time at Columbia Harbor House, I guess it is. We went in there. The food was great. I just got fish and chips, and we spent a half an hour in there. Then, since we were right across from Haunted Mansion, Haunted Mansion has always been my favorite attraction. I saw it first in 1972 when I was 14, and we got to go through the back entrance. It was cool to see the employees back there. You felt like you didn't really belong, but they just looked and smiled at you because they knew it was a tour. We got to get into the room. It's funny. We got to get into that first room. I won't give anything away if you've never seen the attraction, but you go into a room first that the show starts at. We entered from one side, and the normal people, I'm using air quotes right now, they entered for the other side, and we got to experience Haunted Mansion that way. Came out of Haunted Mansion, and it was utilidors time, and it was so funny. Here we are, a group of about 20. He marches us through the line at Peter Pan's Flight. We go to a back door. That back door leads us to the utilidors. The other thing was funny. It was starting to pour rain, so it was a good time to get down there. He warned us if anybody's phone came out, even if it was accidental, he's going to take all of us back outside into the rain. So that was enough to make us behave. It was a great trip. I, of course, won't share too much with you. They didn't give us a gag order, so we can talk about it. We just couldn't record anything while we were down there. We saw where the employees come in. There's a big entrance. That day, there was something special going on, so they had snacks and activities for the employees. Everybody seemed to be in a good mood. You would occasionally see an employee running because I guess they were late for work. One of the coolest things we saw was we happened to be standing underneath where Cinderella's castle is. The utilidors is the bottom floor, and then the Magic Kingdom is built on top of it. You go through that if you need to see that tour. Go that tour. Now, it's expensive. I'll tell you why it was too expensive. I spent too much money on it, but I would do it the same way again. You have to buy an admission to the park. You have to spend the money for the tour itself. And then I decided, well, after our tour's over about 2:00, I don't want to wait in lines, but I've never seen Tiana's, and I've never seen the Big Thunder Mountain Railroad since they reopened it. So I got a Fast Pass, or Lightning Lane, I guess they call it now, and scheduled those things. And Pirates of the Caribbean, I wanted to see that. So while we were in the utilidor, 2 different times we saw princesses walking up a ramp to an elevator. And it was kind of cool because they waved at us like they were entertaining. They waved at us and got on the elevator to go up into, the Cinderella Royal Table is what they call it now. That's the restaurant that's in Cinderella Castle. So that was kind of cool to see that. I didn't see anything crazy. Most of what I saw were employees dressed in their employee garb that they wear while they're working the attraction. You know how Haunted Mansion people dress. We saw some of those. Didn't see any characters walk around, no characters carrying their head under their arm or anything like that. It's kind of funny. He said one of the most popular questions he gets is how many Mickey Mouses are there in Magic Kingdom? And the line is always, there's just one. And just like Santa Claus, everybody else, if they're ever asked that question, respond by saying, I'm a Mickey Mouse helper. And I thought that was a cool story. So that was it. Went back to but here's the saddest part of my trip. I spent this $32 so I didn't have to stand in line. And it was pouring rain so hard that Tiana's was closed down. Big Thunder was closed down. I started to walk around. I wanted to get a cinnamon roll at Gaston, so I almost got lost. I hadn't been back in that area for a while, and there's so many new things. When I say new things, new walkways and that kind of thing. I got my cinnamon roll. It was so packed in there because people were trying to get out of the rain. I walked around to where the railroad station would be. It was closed. I walked around to where the people mover would be. It wasn't closed, but because everything else was closed, it was absolutely packed. So I saw the writing on my wall. I said, I am not going to. I did have a lightning lane for about 2 hours from them, but I said, there's not enough to keep me here for 2 hours. I could come back over later, but I didn't. I went back to the hotel and chilled out. I went to their pool. I like going to the pools. I'm more of a hot tub person than a pool, so I really spent more time in there. But all the pools at the DVC resorts are nice. So next day I checked out, drove back to the airport. What I was going to say about the Sanford airport, where I fly out of, there's 4 different gates sharing the same waiting area, and it's so confusing. I was shocked that there wasn't individual place for each gate and that they didn't accidentally put somebody on the wrong plane. There are lots of senior citizens that use this airport. There were probably 8 wheelchairs in my area. And of course, you got to board them first, get all that packed. But we left on time. I got home on time. It was excellent. I missed it when I got home. I liked waking up and seeing the monorail, or waking up and seeing the big Epcot ball, or waking up and seeing the animals. I love that kind of thing. Glad that I'm going back Sunday. I'll do different things on Sunday. I'll finally get into Topolino's. I will get to the Boma dinner. I only did Boma breakfast, and I love Boma, so I'll do that while I'm there. I'll have a day just to goof off. Not sure if I'm going to go back to Disney Springs. We'll see. I like Saratoga Springs. Well, the way I said that, I'll go back to Disney Springs because it's so close. But I like Guy Fieri's Chicken Guy place, and that's really cheap. So I'm not getting the dining plan this time. I'll just go with cash. So, not sure about Topolino's. Their steak's $67, and I like pasta too, which is $32. So, I'm not sure what I'm going to get. But that's it. That's my trip report. I had a blast. It was great fun. I think I have used most of next year's points too, but the DVC points. And I posted on one of the DVC Facebook pages, how many of y'all use your points from the next year? You can borrow them in. And there was so many people that said they did that. I'm not the only one doing it. And they laugh. Most of them said, well, it only catch up with me until the last year of the contract when I don't have another year to borrow from. But that's it. It was a great trip. I hope you get excited about DVC. If you go often, it is the way to go. You can stay in nicer locations. You can move up to a 1-bedroom villa, 2-bedroom villa that'll have a washer and dryer and a full kitchen. And, you might say, who wants to cook on vacation? And if you're hitting the park every day, that's probably true. But I cook spaghetti every year when I go. And they actually, if you want to just wait until you get there, the gift shops, like at Bay Lake Tower, they have spaghetti and spaghetti sauce there. You can buy it. Just about anything you want to cook. There's a lot of stuff in the cold box, like pizzas. But you got to make sure. I think I did get a chicken pot pie one time because I knew it was microwavable. And I have found that I like waiting in lobbies. I didn't mind waiting for my room to be ready. I like watching families. And I decided this year, why do I enjoy watching the family interaction? They're so happy when they get there. They're usually happy when they leave. But maybe at the end of a park day, they get back and they're very tired. So if you recognize them, you see the reactions. But let's face it, I see kids, preteen and younger, and the reason I enjoy watching the families is because it reminds me of my own. I mean, my daughter's 40 and my sons are 36, And I can remember just like yesterday when I took them, and it was so much fun. And I love to see other kids having fun like that too. So that's it. That's the trip report, and we'll see you on the next podcast.